guys, thanks for joining the channel tonight. Tonight we're going to get into a mechanics deep dive on our collars, specifically on timings with the collars. We're not going to be getting into the deer grunt or the rattle bags or anything like that specifically, but we're going to be looking at the timings. We'll probably use the deer grunt collar itself as just an example, but it works the same for all of your deer species. Most of the collars are going to work the same way. There are exceptions. The jackrabbit predator collar, for example, has some different nuances to it, and the bird collars, whatever, they're their own thing. But in terms of our normal collars, our red deer, elk, when we're using those type of collars, the hog collar, we're looking at collars that use the same type of timings. And when I'm talking about the timings, I mean specifically once you hit the call and you have your little triangle working across the screen, those timings in which it takes for it to hit the different points will give you different responses from the animals depending on what's happening. And we're going to see exactly how that timing plays into using your collars. So let's get into it. Looking at the deer grunt collar, you can see immediately this has been edited just a little bit, and we've added in some markers to help kind of isolate what is happening in the process. At a high level, basically what you're looking at is you hit the collar, the deer walks in. It takes it about 45 seconds to walk in. It's going to stop. It's going to stand there for 15 to 20 seconds. It's going to alert and start to turn back, and then it's going to trot back. And every single time you use the collar, if you just call one time, that's what's going to happen. Now, when we start getting into the specifics here, this is where things get a little more nuanced with the collars and their timings. So starting here at the beginning with the deer walking in. So you hit the collar, you get that first call out there, and something starts walking in. Now, it could be the first call bogey, and that's where when you're making that first call, something that shouldn't be responding does. For example, you're using the low fit grunt in this case, and a doe starts walking in. Even though it's the wrong animal, it's still going to follow the same timeline. For hunting, that's a problem, but for understanding how it works, it's not that big of a deal. So they walk in. So what happens is they take their path. They may go around things. They may stop. The different parts of the walk as they come in can change. But effectively, they're going to walk in. Now, they can't start walking until they finish that animation that they're already in. So if they've just started maybe a 5-second animation, you're going to have to wait a few seconds to even see if they start to respond. If they're laying down, they're going to have to stand up before they can start to respond and walk in. So that's something that's going to always mess with your timings. So if you hear me say 45 seconds, it's not 45 seconds on the dot. It's never going to be consistently on the dot exactly the same time every time you use it, because of the different animations they're going through and any other variables that are built into the timing. But we can pretty consistently say it takes about 45 seconds for them to walk in. It may be 40, 42, 47, whatever. It's going to be around that 45 second mark. So what happens is they're walking in. And it's not, again, that dead zombie, but you can tell when they're walking in directly towards you. So they start walking in, they walk in, they walk in. The timer, your little triangle is progressing across the screen, and you get to about where the R is, and the deer's going to stop. That's about 45 seconds into the process, and it stops. So that's the beginning of the shooting window. So they come in, they stop, and they're going to stand there for about 15 to 20 seconds. This is kind of two things in one that are super important. A, it is the absolute best time to recall to keep the animal coming in. B, it is your perfect shooting window if you can take a frontal shot. So stepping back to the A part, why would I say that's the best time to call to keep an animal coming in? The game tells us, call in the middle of the bar. Okay, This is kind of sort of in the middle of the bar. It's not dead center, but it's in the thick portion. And a lot of us call well before the deer stops. I know I myself, I used to call between the R and the G very consistently. And most of the time, it's not a problem. The deer or whatever animal it is will continue to come in. Most of the time. The problem is sometimes they don't continue to come in and you actually turn them off. So they're coming in, you hit it again, and then they just wander back away. They just completely lose interest. I've done it myself. I've had it happen more than once. And the problem is when you call before they stop, you have a higher chance of turning them off. Now that can be useful. You can use that to your advantage with some of the collars, especially something like the Kiyi Predator collar when you're working through a herd of wolves or a herd of or pack of lions, whatever. But when we're hunting deer, let's assume we're trying to get the right thing to come in that we're expecting. You don't want to call too early because it has the potential of turning them off. Plus, in my opinion, the collars are already very, very busy. You have to constantly be using them again and again and again, and it's so monotonous and redundant and just annoying to have to keep calling every 45 seconds. Why would I want to take that 45 seconds and cut it down to 30 or 35 and call that many more times? So, for me personally, the absolute best time to call is once the deer stops. The good thing is you will very, very rarely have an animal lose interest once they stop. They stop, you call, within a few seconds they start coming back in again. It's very rare that you actually have one lose interest. I won't say it's impossible because everything is always a possibility, but it happens so rare that I would say it just doesn't happen really. So that's the deer stopping, the perfect time to call, and it begins the next little window, and that's the shooting window / call again. So anytime that they've stopped, you have about 15 to 20 seconds. Again, just like everything else, there's some variability in here. I'm never going to say it's exactly 17.25 seconds, but call it 15, call it 20, whatever number you want to use. The key takeaway is they're going to stand there dead still. And that gives you a really good shooting window for some animals. I say for some animals because let's suppose you're on the giraffe tower and you're calling in a black bear. A frontal shot with a black bear is already pretty difficult because of the way the neck's designed and how deep the heart is. An elevated frontal shot on a black bear is really pushing the limits. So that's not a great shooting window for bear. And depending on the situation, other animals could have the same type of problem. But for deer, it's fine. And if you're on the ground, it's a little bit better anyway. But that is your shooting window. They're going to stand there. They're going to stand still. You have time to make changes. So maybe you forgot to zero your rifle and you need to change it from 800 yards to 150 or 100 or whatever. You have time to cycle through that. Or you get excited and bring up the wrong weapon. I do it all the time. I'll bring up the crossbow when I need the Armad, or I'll bring up a collar when I'm trying to get the Armad. Yeah, that's a me problem, but it eats up time. And I'm sure I'm not the only person who ever clicks on the wrong thing whenever you're looking to take a shot. So you have that window, and you have time to get everything set. Maybe you need to bring up hunter sense if you're going to use the dot, but you have time, and that's a key thing. So the deer walks in, they stop, they stand there for their 15 seconds, and then they are going to generally alert. And I don't mean go into an alerted state where they're going to run off, but they do that alert bark. If we're talking about deer, you get that alert bark. Now, the good thing is, sometimes when they're at that stop phase, they'll give a call as well, especially foxes. Foxes are really good for giving that alert bark when they stop to let you know it's time to call again. I mean, that's maybe not what they're doing, but they do it at that point, and it's a good clue to call again. Now, the deer do it less often, but they do sometimes call when they stop. But they more often alert before they go back. It's very, very often. Again, I won't say always or 100% of the time, but often they give you that alert bark. And that's a really big indicator that you need to pay attention to because you're losing time to get the shot off. So once they do that alert bark, you've got just a few seconds, and then they're going to start to turn back. So they bark, they slowly turn, and within a few more seconds, they've turned all the way and they're starting to trot back. Now, the good news is anywhere from the time they stop until they start back, you've got a really high probability of getting them to continue walking in if you recall. Once they start trotting back, things get a little more different. It used to be very, very difficult at best to turn an animal once they've started trotting back. You just about had to wait until they made it back to the herd or wherever they're going, the caller timed out, and then call them back. Now, and I'm not sure when it changed, but now if you hit the caller while they're trotting back, very often they do turn and come back in. I can't say that there's a percentage of chance or anything like that because I don't know. I doubt we would ever have that type of information made available, but I have seen it very, very recently, and they were absolutely pretty consistently turning back during that trot back phase. So that's new to me, and I don't know when it changed, but that's good news for us, the hunters, because it opens up our windows a little bit further. Now, I cannot say it always worked, and I think that more often if you're calling high fit and low fit at the same time, you run into those issues that happen with that. And I think it's definitely less likely if you've jumped over to the low fit from the high and you're trying to get the high to come back in. So the more tricky calling like that you're doing, the bigger your chances are of stuff losing interest anyway. And this isn't about doing that type of stuff. This is about the timing. But keep in mind, if you are trying to get something to return once it's trotting back, there is a chance that it will return, but it's not consistent. So they walk in, they stop, you have the shooting window, they alert, they start back, and then they trot back. And when they're trotting back, keep in mind they're not necessarily always going to go directly to the herd. They may go to the side or sometimes almost towards you, but they'll trot in some direction, and maybe get them to come in if you call it again. We're seeing it as a possibility, but assuming they don't, they're going to continue to trot to their final location, and then they will go and rejoin the herd. Usually they kind of trot near the herd, but not always right directly at the herd. So that's kind of the key point with the timing there. So just to kind of walk through it again real quick, you hit the collar, they walk in. It takes about 45 seconds, and then they're going to stop. Often, well, maybe I should say sometimes they'll call. Foxes often call, but sometimes they'll call when they stop. But they're going to stand there after they stop for about 15 to 20 seconds, and then they're going to alert, oftentimes with a bark or a call of some sort. Again, this is not an alert like they're getting ready to spook, but it does give you that alert title if you have hunter sense up. So they alert after 15 to 20 seconds, and then you've got a very small window where they're going to turn sideways, and this is really handy for the bear we were talking about earlier. So we know a high frontal shot is really tough with a bear, but they do that turn. So as long as you're prepared, you can take a shot when they make that turn, because it's going to be a pretty consistent turn. They're going to give you a good broadside shot. You're going to have to be quick. You're not going to be able to cycle through your weapons. You need to have it up and ready to go when they make that turn. But if you're prepared, that gives you a great opportunity to get a broadside shot into a bear or whatever animal it is that you're looking for. Maybe you need a broadside shot for something else, but that's your opportunity with the collar to get that broadside shot. It's a higher level of difficulty because it's a very short window. They're not going to stop. They're going to be turning, and they're quickly going to go into a trot phase once they make that turn. So if you're going to take advantage of that, you got to be quick. Um, so they walk in, they stop, they stand there, they alert, they do that turn, and then they trot back to the herd. And that's it. So the biggest numbers to keep in mind is that 45 seconds walking in, and then the 15 to 20 seconds that they stand there. How long it takes them to trot back doesn't really matter. You're not looking to do anything. If you're letting them trot back, it's something that you don't care about and you're moving on. So as long as you keep in mind the timings and understand that it's not something that's specific. It's not always exactly 45 seconds. Even in the little image here, you can see we put in a window on the line. You know, it's not a specific little sliver on here, it's a window. So roughly somewhere under the R is about where they're going to stop. Sometimes they'll be further to the left, a little further to the right, sometimes they'll be lined straight up. And that's the same thing for the alert and for the starting back phase. It's all about this time. It's about 45 seconds in. It's about 15 to 20 seconds later. It's about 5 seconds before they start trotting back. So don't get too caught up on that part of it. The key part really is them walking in and stopping, because that's where all the magic happens. They stop, you recall, or you prepare to shoot. If you're not doing that, what are you using the collar for? I don't know. For me, I use them to bring animals in to shoot. So hopefully this gives a little more insight into the timing. And keep in mind, like I said, this is the same for most of the collars. There are a few that do act different, but basically any of your deer collars, the hog collar, things like that, they follow the same logic. And you don't even need to be looking at it. You can watch the animal, and when they stop, bring it up and call again. You don't have to sit there and watch the bar. You can be looking at other things. Pay attention. You may hear them call out. You may hear them alert. Those are good indicators that you need to get that call down again if you're going to. So hopefully this helps out a little bit. Feel free to reach out to me on Discord or in here in YouTube, whatever, with questions or comments. I'll be glad to try to help out if you're having issues or any questions about this. So definitely please reach out. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you joining the video. New to this, so I apologize for any issues along the way. I'm sure it's not the best video you've ever seen, and the editing's probably in the lower half in terms of quality, because I'm learning everything here with all this as I go. So I appreciate you guys joining in tonight, and I guess I should be saying like and subscribe, all that good stuff. Guys, y'all have a good night. God bless, and happy hunting.